And good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for spending your valuable time with the Adapt 2030 channel. March 2023 wheat report. Global production less than global consumption. We see it again for the last 3 years. No wonder prices are up. It explains why the 2023 wheat totals for sales are far down. Africa's biggest food crisis. Guess who's going to try to take advantage of that? China weakening U.S. dollar. 40 African nations in Moscow. Bye-bye, U.S. Guess who borrowed $500 billion in 2 weeks? Banks in the U.S. backstop. Commercial banks drained, the largest outflows ever. Big problems. Last 7 trading days, largest 7-day decline in yields. Looking for a crash. Because the rest of the world's moving forward, America's going to be stuck with baling wire and duct tape and running wires through bricks to survive. And the new wealth will be the production of your own food as we move through this movement that hasn't been seen in 100 years of reserve currency bouncing now over to the BRICS. The U.S. is going to be left in a hyperinflationary state. I cannot believe how many videos I am watching about the dollar collapsing, and the linchpin would be Saudi Arabia marching ahead to accept anything and all currencies outside of the U.S. dollar, which has happened already. If you cannot produce your own food, you are going to be in dire straits. Protein is also going to be a must know how to produce. Because when you see $1.99 per organic avocado, great, free wooden ball in the middle. What happens when it becomes $199 or $1,999? Think Zimbabwe in America. And just interestingly how it coincides with the rollover of not growing enough food on the planet to feed everybody. March 2023 U.S. Wheat Associates putting it out. Global wheat production 788 million tons. That's disputed as projections are forthcoming. 50% losses in Argentina. Global wheat consumption 793. That is over what we're producing just for wheat. Now imagine all the other commodities that are following the same. So let's break it down a little bit further here for the highlights. This is off the USDA's 2022-23 wheat estimates. Global wheat production forecast 788 million tons, even though they say that's up. And I don't know how, with all the droughts and unusual climate conditions around the planet, global consumption will increase 2 million tons approximately, leaving a 4.3 million ton deficit. And outside of Australia and the United States, all those other countries are going to start accepting a medium of exchange backed by commodities known as the BRICS currency. That'll eventually have a name to it, as a basket of world reserve currencies pledged and backed by real world assets, not military and hyperinflationary printing. But here's the chart that should shock you. World production and use. Have you noticed for the last 3 years, 2020, 2021, 22, 23, we are not growing enough food to feed the planet. So the carryover stocks are literally what we have left, and those are being eroded year upon year. Have you noticed the change of our world occurred the exact same year that the production for food was lower than the demand for food across the planet? Let's look at it in an even more broken down spreadsheet style here. World wheat supply and demand. And if you look at the beginning stocks of the supply, they continue to trend downward. 298, 285, 271. And these are also in millions of tons. Have you started to notice an increase in the appearance of wrinkles, fine lines, bags under your eyes, or other unusual signs of aging? It may be more than just stress. Wrinkles and other marks of aging are one of the top signs that your collagen levels are low. Whether you're in your 20s or your 90s, you can experience the healthy aging effects collagen has on your skin with the help of this multi-collagen powder. I want you to try it as well and experience the amazing benefits it's had on me. Take 51% off your order and receive some special bonuses with that before the spring sale ends. Go to healthwithadapt2030.com. That's healthwithadapt2030.com. Get ready to feel your best this summer. Order now and I'll let you see my goats. And now on with the video. Now, the demand for food and seed is increasing, and you notice that's at 635 million tons compared to 625. And the total usage increased from 788 million tons up to 793 million tons, nearly 5 million. Now, if you add in this anecdotal wheat sales to the top 10 customers globally, why is 2022-23 predominantly down in most nations of the top U.S. exports for wheat? The only countries that increased were South Korea, China, Thailand, and the EU. Barely. Everything else has dropped so much. Why is that? And Canadian ending stocks are the canary in the coal mine. 45 degrees north latitude and above, 45 degrees south latitude and below. It's starting to go offline. I've been talking about this since the beginning of my channel. We were going to reach the rollover year, and something would need to change at that point. The number of mouths to feed would need to be reduced, or there would have to be rationing in place, or we would have to come up with new technologies to grow more food for an increasing population. There's no other choice. We've reached that point, and you can see how the world changed in tandem as we reached that point 2 years ago. Now, if you look at it from this set of, metrics, you could see that there are other real-world events that followed that accomplished some of those goals. Where do we go from here? Because by all accounts, as the registered harvests are coming in from the southern hemisphere, they're looking at 30 to 50% losses of the last year's averages, or say the 5-year average. Ukraine is going to be planting an 11% less, added to their already totals of something like 60% reduced field space. So we're down around 75% reduction in arable land will be planted. That only leaves maybe a plus 25%. So look at it. Before the war, only 25% of all the Ukraine will be planted this year, and that's a hopeful estimate. The drought still rages in the U.S. Southern Hemisphere, atrocious at best. And now the fertilizer costs and all the farm inputs are increasing 3x from last year's 3x increase, bringing us to about a 6-fold increase in farm input costs in 2 years. Something's going to break, and it already has. This shift to the new monetary system is a shift to the major grain growers that can interoperate across the Belt and Road Initiative to keep the people fed. The last part I talked about in 2015-16 was setting up North Africa and the Sahel as a new grow zone, and the capital and investment required, stable coins to pay those multinationally that are coming in to work, and setting that up as the world's largest breadbasket under control of now the BRICS nations. U.S. is left out. I'm sorry. This is what it's going to turn into. Please protect yourselves. We're going to be heading into a very steep hyperinflationary event here. It looks like as soon as Saudi Arabia guarantees sales outside and they start working through the gold window of China, things are going to change rapidly. And it's going to shock everybody how quickly prices are going to double, triple, quadruple. And we're going to run into something, I kid you not, Venezuela or Zimbabwe style here in America. I can't even believe I would say that, but it looks like we are at the very beginning of it. So when it runs up to a 10x increase, I'm not sure when they're going to revalue the cash and do a reset on the monies. Lynette Zhang is more attuned to that. Edward Dowden is another person to follow, and also Andy Schechtman. Those three are going to paint a very clear picture on the economic side. I'm trying to add in the ag side in the 400-year to 2,000-year cycle that is affecting the crops, that's running in and creating the catalyst for everything else to follow off of it. If you can't grow enough food on the planet, things are going to change, and they have already begun to. And if we look at the wheat prices, if we were going to continue just in a linear fashion, follow from April 2020, we'd be up around $10 wheat anyway. That spike when the Russia invasion occurred and then the subsequent double peak and drop. It's still going to trend up and up from this point. Less wheat means higher prices. It was already baked in the cake, no pun intended. But when you do look at the buying power of the British pound in 1800, about 223 years ago, the buying power has pretty much gone to zero. And on the right chart, we're going to see the Federal Reserve and the U.S. dollar going pretty much to zero. You can't issue debt in perpetuity forever and come off the gold standard and print trillions of dollars and then guarantee backing of banks for 18 trillion more and expect nothing to happen when our currency is this devalued already? What about the food prices? This is going to be the catalyst that sets it all off. And here we are, UAE already setting up their digital dirham, CBDC, cash settlements, oil rolling into China. U.S. is left out. So when you see things like this, the Bank of Canada, Bank of England, Bank of Japan, ECB, European Central Bank, the Federal Reserve right here at home, and the Swiss National Bank, all announcing that they're going to throw whatever it takes and print to infinity, all of these central banks, to bail out the quadrillions in derivatives of defaults on banks and bank depositors. Because another nugget here that just emerged, the 2-year Treasury. Now, I'm not really following the Treasuries too closely, but when I see a major, so far black swan out of, this is a pond full of black swans that is swimming home here. The largest 7-day decline in yields brought about the 1987 crash. So when we see the same repeat again, you just have to wonder how long it's going to be before this crash begins again. And the amount of money to throw into it to stop it is, it's just going to debase the currency further. And we are going to start seeing doubling, tripling, quadrupling, 10x, 20x, 100x prices very soon. Because guess who just borrowed $500 billion in 2 weeks? All commercial banks in the United States. Now, I wanted to be very clean with this. They're using the discount window for this. So what is the discount window? Well, when nobody else will lend you money, as a commercial bank, you go to the Fed and you say, with your little begging bowl and bowl of gruel, Fed, please give us some money. This is to backstop a complete failure in the banking system. They are the lender of last resort, meaning no other bank will lend to them because the banks don't even trust that bank that it will pay it back. Mainly commercial industries, and this is what we're seeing across the board here, and it is scary. That much up, something's very wrong. We saw the same thing in 2020 during the COVID era, but that is a small jump compared to what just happened. And I wish this chart went further back into 2008 and 9. Oh, wait, I found it. The discount window. You can't tell me that 2008 and 9, the biggest financial crisis in world history, evolved more slowly than this massive grab for cash to stop bank failures and the straight up vertical line. Protect yourselves financially, not financial advice. This is common sense, straight up common sense. So looking at UBS, who supposedly bought Credit Suisse but is trying to back out of the deal now and now has the Swiss government backing it. You have a nation's entire GDP tied to this, trying to stop the failures of their banks. That is the end of the system. It truly is. There's nowhere to go now. There's nothing left except a switch to a new system to start over. So this next 70 to 80 years, you'll watch all of these very developing nations across North Africa become as wealthy as America, and they will collapse after the next fourth turning in 80 years. And that money will switch the pendulum and will probably swing back to the U.S. after we've gone through this extreme poverty and extreme hyperinflation event. U.S. commercial bank deposits, that right side is, they're still taking money out. That they're going to have to put more bars in here. They're going to need the 5%, 10% bar eventually here in the next few weeks. They can't stop it. There's too many stories out right now about BRICS and the movement of money into this new, and 142 nations joining this new currency bloc. None of them joining the U.S. None of them want anything to do with the Western monetary system any longer. They've created their own and they're moving. When we see Saudi Arabia formally join, that is the end of the petrodollar. And that is very quickly going to be the end of what you consider U.S. dollar dominance on this planet. China, Russia, Asia, Africa, Latin America, 2/3 of all countries on the planet are going to move to the UN for settlements instantly convertible to gold. Instantly convertible. Within fractions of a second, convertible to gold. Now, China and Russia are working together to bring in this new system. And then 40 African nations are in Moscow. America snubs the nose at African nations. Perpetually props up dictators to get cheaper minerals. And now these 40 nations are going to say, hey, we want to work with somebody that's going to give us fair value and not cause coup after despot after coup. And we just lost our access to Africa also. That's BRICS territory now. And by the way, that's exactly where the setup for the new growth zone of the planet will be. Ethiopia all the way to Mauritania, up to Morocco and back to Egypt. It is truly a sad day for the United States to see this over the weekend with the emergency meetings from the Fed to try to stop a full collapse of our banking system as trillions are outflowing to the BRICS. There's no backstopping it. There's no natural resources we can pledge to start a new currency to even compete with. The only thing we have is a military. And without supply chains, that military is non-functional. It requires money and bribery to keep it going. Neither of those are going to be very forthcoming when the currency that you were holding turns to 1/1000th of its prior value. The Western countries have taken advantage of the situation for 70 plus years. The amount of horrific acts done to keep people on that dollar, you could write volumes to the top of the room 60-fold. It's coming home to roost. They're sick of it. They're done with it. There's a second alternative. It's real value, and this is going to die on the vine starting now. The food supply in itself, again, was the catalyst to move over. Was it all planned? Perhaps. Maybe the BRICS are doing the dance with the Western nations, and it was all planned, just another movement of monies. Because you have to look at the families in control for the last 6,000 years. They still have the wealth, the power, many of them. It's coordinated. It's coordinated like this every 80 years to reset the system. Just unfortunately, this time we're on the receiving end of the hyperinflation backlash. It's going to be an interesting rest of the year. Like I said in the beginning, you might want to prepare and really start thinking about how to grow some of your own food. Read about the Great Depression. Read about what happened in Zimbabwe. Luckily enough, I was able to travel there. I traveled in Zimbabwe when the exchange rate was 10 Zim to a dollar. That was before the hyperinflationary event. And even, I'll tell you the story, even when it was only 10 to 1, when it used to be pegged very close to a U.S. dollar, when it was 10 to 1, oh, the world was falling apart at 10 to 1. Even those that had money and opulence and had guest houses and hotels and, tour agencies where you could go out, obviously on safaris, and go out and roll through Vic Falls and other places further up into Zambia and whatnot. They were terrified of losing everything at a 10x increase, or I should say decrease. 10x increase on my part for $1 bought me, it was the most spectacular living, bottles of wine, steaks and everything, and you come out of the restaurant and spend like $8. They were losing everything and just nail biting every time they heard that it increased. So by the time I left, I looked back again about a year later and it was at 100 to 1. It really goes that fast. And they're going to reset the currency along the way to try to chop zeros as it happens. If you're not self-autonomous at least enough, your best plan would be to get out of the U.S. Remove yourself from any Western nation that's tied to the U.S. dollar and get into a nation that is connected to the BRICS and has some sort of banking system that's outside the U.S. dollar base that can be backed by gold or some kind of metals. That's out of comprehension for most to even pick up your life and move to a different nation, an unknown time, and the cusp of a world war heading into this complete collapse of dollar value. The world we're moving into is something we really haven't seen in hundreds of years. At least they claim in all these videos that are suddenly popping out everywhere. I can't even not believe that Fox, NBC, MSNBC are all featuring articles on how the U.S. is going to lose its reserve currency status. Continuously running these stories. They're prepping your mind for it. Get ready. They're prepping your mind. I wouldn't have believed it myself, but this weekend was so weird in the way that the Fed had their special, secret closed door meetings, and out of the woodwork on Sunday, you're getting a bevy of like 50 different videos telling you you're going to lose the reserve status of the world currency. You're going to lose it. As soon as Saudi Arabia goes to, and they already have on Monday today, stated that they're in negotiation to go over to settle in the UN. What 1 week difference the world will make. Anyway, thank you for watching. You're going to need to get ready. I got storable foods right here at what would be discount prices. I mean, a year from now, you'd be like, oh, I can't believe I didn't even buy that. Oh, it's 10 times cheaper now than it would be coming up a year from now. My Patriot Supply and Adapt 2030. Take $200 off the 3-month emergency food supply. Also, we talk 2 hours at a time, Ransom Godwin and myself, about these same issues. Every Thursday night, 10 p.m. to midnight, Revolution Radio, Studio A, libertylinks.io/solar minimum. I do wish you the best in your preparation.